Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining me for part 3 of the Spoons Still Life course for class. So up to this point, we've drawn it out and we've done the background, and I think it's looking pretty good. So today, we're going to start working on the spoon. So it's going to be great fun. We'll learn how to do that metallic effect, and then we'll take it from there. So let's go take a look at the photograph, and then let's take a look and see what lies ahead. Alrighty, so if I look at that metal, I'm not 100% sure what type of metal it is, but what I do know is that it's certainly not shiny. It's got a bit of quite antique, old feel to it, hasn't it? So let's zoom in there and see if we can try and figure out what kind of colors are we going to need to mix for that. Because you're thinking metal, you're thinking really bright colors, but there's certainly not too many bright colors here. Yes, there are. The highlights are pretty much pure white. But look at the top spoon over there. He's almost heading towards a quite a charcoal kind of color. So if I look at it, I think if we start off with maybe a gray color, and then we can change it, because there's a few different tinges. If I zoom in on this area over here, it's a bit of a brownish kind of a color. But then right next to it over here, it's more of a bluish tinge to it. You see that? I don't think, to be perfectly honest, I don't think we need to really stick to those exact colors. Metal is metal. As long as we're in that grayish spectrum like we see over here, then we should be A for away. And that's sort of the interesting thing about metal. Metal generally is reflective, right? So it's going to reflect the colors around it. So metal itself, being reflective, actually has no color. So here on the right hand side, let's take a look at that top piece there. That's quite dark. You're not seeing the metal there. You're seeing deposits that are actually on top of the metal. So give that thing a polish and it'll be perfectly shiny. And then you'll have actually no color. Because he's reflective. You can't see his color. We don't know what color silver is. It's quite bizarre, hey? All right, so let's go over to the palette and let's see what colors we can mix. So I think maybe for now, let's start off by looking at those colors and just getting ourselves in the ballpark. So clearly we need white. So we'll start off by popping some white down. Like that. And then what other colors do you think we could be able to use to get that silvery look? My first instinct is you can either use a black. So if you've got, say, maybe a lamb black, that would work fine. Let's say you don't have a black. Then you can mix your own. So there's a few ways of doing that. You can use raw umber and French ultramarine, 50-50, and that'll give you a bluey gray. And I'm kind of tending towards that as our black that we're going to mix, because we saw earlier we've got a brownish tinge, which could come from the raw umber, and it's got a bluish tinge as well in different places, which could come from the French ultramarine. The third way you can use to mix yourself a black is by using your 3 primary colors. So you can use French ultramarine, so 4 parts French ultramarine, and then roughly 4 parts cadmium red, and 1 part, so what is that? 4 parts French ultramarine, 2 parts cadmium red, and then 1 part cadmium yellow. So it's a 4-to-1 ratio. more or less, and that should also get you a nice neutral kind of black. So I think I'm going to go for the raw umber French ultramarine option. And I think we shouldn't mix too little, because we've got, well, at least my canvas is pretty big. So I'm going to pop them down 50-50. You see that? Same amount. So let me just get this camera to focus nice and steady on us so he doesn't run around. That should do the trick. All right, let's mix these guys together. So as you see, I always put my colors down at the top, and then I bring them down to mix. So sometimes it does work like that, the color that I'm mixing is everything that I've put down over there. But it doesn't matter. Now I've still got a spot for raw umber and French ultramarine. So if I ever need to, during this painting session, put down paint again, I'll put down the raw umber there, and I'll put down the French ultramarine there, so that at least I know they stay nice and clean. All right, so how do I know whether I've got the right ratio? What I'm doing is, as I'm mixing this, the paint sort of, just put that down over there, spreads like this. So you've got an area where I can see the palette, and an area where there's solid paint, but here in between there's a twilight zone. And that twilight zone is telling me what color there is. So I can see here's a nice neutral, a neutral black. If I had too much blue, that would have a bluish tinge to it. If I had too much raw umber in it, that would have a brownish tinge to it. But the 50-50 ratio works great to get a nice neutral color. So by knowing that ratio, that's allowed me to instantly get the color that I want. So from here, I am going to adjust him, because I'm going to need little bluish tinges. So I'll put down a little bit of French ultramarine for the bluish tinges, and I'll put down a little bit of raw umber for the brownish tinges. So I can then go and chop and change and adjust him as I need. So here's a nice thing that I will also often do. I'm now not sure, is that color right or is it not right? So I will sometimes first do a few little tests. So I'll just take a brush, any old brush, and I'm going to take some of this paint and just put it down here on the palette. Spread it out like that. And let's pick up some of the white. And I'm going to just mix some of that white into this. And I'm going to see, is it giving me the kind of color that I need? Can you see I've just done a quick little test drive over there. If I look at that and I look at what I'm seeing on the screen, I am super stoked. It looks pretty much it. So while we're at it, and we are testing things, let's go and take a look at that that side over there where we've got those little tinges and tints in the colors. Let's see, do we really need to add the raw umber and French ultramarine to get the colors that we need, or do we need to actually add something else? So I think I'm going to mix a bit more white into this, just so that we've got just a single tone. All right, so now let's start off with, say, a bit of raw umber into that. Let's see, what does it give us? It does seem to be heading towards that other brownish color. I think it needs a bit more white. Let's get a bit more raw umber and white into that mix. So to test myself, what I'm actually doing is I will pick some up on the brush like this. Then I'll hold it upright like that. And I'll hold this against the screen. So obviously I can't show you that, but you would move it across like that and hold it against the screen to compare and see, is that giving me the kind of color that I want? And I must admit, it's pretty close. It's not perfect. But like I said earlier, I don't think with this kind of a thing we need to work super perfect. That's good enough. All right, so let's wash that brush and do a test on the blue as well. So we'll get a bit of ultramarine, mix it into that little neutral mix of ours. Let's take a look. How are we doing? So again, I'm holding it up against the screen so that I can see the paint that's on the brush and the paint and the color on the screen side by side. Yeah, it's good enough. I think we A for away. So that was a nice easy mix. So from there, all we need is our neutral brown mix, white, and the tints by adding a little bit of blue or brown. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to mix some painting medium into this big ball of paint. So because whatever else we're going to be using is going to have that in it. So by adding some painting medium into this, I'm going to get the drying effect. So I'm not adding tons of paint medium. I'm not really trying to thin it. Just to get it to, say, a mayonnaise kind of consistency would be good. Just nice and a creamy consistency like that. Look at that. So as I add a little bit of raw umber, a little bit of blue to it, it'll mix with that medium that's there. And then I am going to, I think, just take a little bit of medium into the white as well. Because there are places where the white is pretty much neat. So if I do this and add a little bit of medium into this, then at those places I know that it will help speed up the drying process. Because white is notorious for drying ridiculously slow. So by getting that little bit of medium in it, it speeds up that drying process. So at least I know in a week or so that this will be perfectly dry. At worst 2 weeks, if you've painted really thick. So it's not a thinning. Again, I'm not trying to thin it. I'm just getting the medium in there to get the drying effect, to speed up the drying process. Alrighty. So I think let's go and just take a look at the canvas again and see where we are and what do we need to do. So I think at the moment it's looking quite like a scene from space, some other galactic explosion or something, doesn't it? It's looking quite pretty though. So at this point, let's take off that mask. This is a crunch time. So now all you need to do is just find yourself a spot on the edge. So be careful that you don't, in the process, punch through your canvas. If you're working on a box canvas like I am. Oh wow, look at that. And so what I like to do at this kind of point Because when we painted all the salt and stuff, you couldn't particularly tell whether you've done a good job or not. So now I'm going to have just a quick look, and I can see here I didn't quite go over the edge enough. Can you see there? There's a little bit of a halo over there. There I don't have it. There we've got a nice solid amount. So that's great. I think it's going to look good. We can still, with a little bit of an imagination, we can start to imagine our scene or our final painting already. So that's awesome. I'm pretty stoked with that. Okay, so now it's a matter of start at one point and work your way across. So you can start on the right hand side or left hand side. Pick a spoon. So what I like to do, let's just overlay the photo over there. What I would like to do when I'm something like this, I mean, I've never painted a spoon like that in my life before, but if you have, chances are you haven't. So what you do is you start with something that you can see is the easiest. So for me, this guy over here is quite plain. These guys over here, they've got all sorts of fancy patterns and stuff to it. So I'm going to do this guy. He's the easiest. And in doing that, and by doing the easiest guy first, I get into the swing of things and get the hang of just creating that effect. And after that, then I'll be able to do all the fancy effects because I know how to do it. I've got a feel for what do I need to do to create that effect. So let me see how far I can zoom in on that guy, that spoon, so that we can still overlay the photo. So just bear with me. I think I'm going to show you just the photo for a second, just so that you don't get a headache from me flipping the camera all over the show, readjusting it. I think that should do the trick. I could possibly even go a little bit further in. There we go. Alrighty. So it's a reasonably sized spoon on for me. So I think I'm going to use a bristle brush. Something like this. So this is mine's labeled at number 5, but you can't go according to these numbers. They're quite ridiculous. Each one's got his own little numbering system. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'll start over here, and then we'll work our way across. I see a lot of white over there, so I think I'm going to start with laying down a white. Just a very basic little white layer, and then from there we can discolor that white and even lift it up if we need to. All right, so somewhere over here there is that rope, but the way mine has laid, my spoons have worked out, I don't think it's quite conductive to a rope. Maybe I could squeeze it in over there eventually. I don't know. So this spoon is on top, so that's quite good. So I'm going to just lay myself down a thin little layer of the white. As thin as I can get it. All I'm trying to do is just get something on the canvas that we can then add other colors to and spread and blend with. So needless to say, you can't see what I'm painting now. Just trust me, I am painting some white. Invisibleness. So do you prefer painting on a large or a small canvas? I must admit, I prefer painting on a large canvas. I'm going to tell you why. A, I can get way more detail into it, and I like doing the detail thing. That's just me. But B, it actually allows me to get the detail while painting actually quite rough and chunky. Because the minute you stand back, then all those rough and chunky marks blend together and they give us what we need. All right, so I can see over here is a bit darker. Let me zoom in on the photograph. So we've got pretty much that over there at the moment. So it's got quite a bit of dark over here. So now I'm going to start by the darkest area, which is over there, which is almost like a black. And I'm not going to wash the brush or nothing, because I know whatever is there and whatever I've got on the brush is on the canvas. So now we'll start over here. And we'll first get a feel for what is this paint that I'm adding to the white. But I must admit, I'm actually pretty happy with that color at the moment. Now is also a good time for you to do a last little check. Do I need to fiddle with this color? Is it not quite right yet? Okay, now all I'm going to do is just try and I'm seeing a little shading going on over there, so I'm going to work on that shading first. And if that goes too dark, which will quickly happen, wipe off the excess off the brush until 90% of it is gone. Pick up some more white and add some more white in. Or blend your white into the brown or into the black. Okay, so I'm not worrying about all those funny little dings and dots and dents and stuff. I'm just getting that basic shading and the basic tonal value of the spoon correct. So that bright seems to go narrower and narrower till around there. So I need to look out for that. Then here is sort of a little design. So for now, I'm going to just fully ignore that design. It shouldn't be too much of a mission for us to work him in. Okay, so I'm going to dump the palette so we can see everything for now. See the whole spoon, because then we can do all of that as well. So obviously this brush is now dirty. I couldn't put neat white down with him, so I'll have to use a new brush. Okay, so let's coat this guy with the white. That worked. Can you see over there my my mask had moved a little bit. So let's hope he covers up. If he doesn't, then I'll just have to give him a few layers until it's gone. Hey man, don't you agree that's already starting to look like silver? So that wasn't too difficult. Alrighty, so let's take a look. It seems to go actually really quite dark over here. And notice that it's not right on the edge, it's just off the edge. So I'll put that down and just continue doing that shading. And then he's nice and bright over there. Now this guy, I'm actually also seeing that he's quite dark on that far edge over there, that top edge. So I think we can do that with a fine liner. If I look carefully, I'm just trying to see, is there that same, because I've seen a dark edge over there, I'm looking for it over here, seeing as the spoon is symmetrical, but I'm not seeing it, so I think we should be okay. Alright, so now I think we've got the basic shape seems to be okay. Maybe here, just a little bit smoother. But these are flat objects, so we can't have all sorts of inconsistencies. We've got to be nice, smooth shadings. So I'll just fiddle around with that guy there a little bit. Now it'd actually be a good time to go over to a larger brush, so you're doing broader strokes. I think we're okay with that. There. And he is lighter towards that back end over there. Can you see that? He's not as dark as, say, here. So I'm pretty happy with that. Will still be places where we'll go dark and so on. So now we need to start getting some of this lovely texture and stuff that we see over there. So the first thing I'm seeing is sort of a bit of browny dirty marks over there. So let's get that palette back. So now we're going to do like those little test drives that we needed over there. So I'm going to do little impromptu mixes. So I'm going to take some raw umber and I'm going to just mix it in with whatever's on the brush and see what color do I get. Maybe quickly hold it up against the screen and see, do I have a roughly not necessarily the perfect color, but roughly that tonal value that I'm seeing over there. And I seem to be okay. So I think let me zoom in on that area over there. Then we can do all that detail work in that corner there. That should be it. Yeah, that should be great. Okay. So I've still just got the same old bristle brush. So if I estimate, that little circle seems to be around there somewhere. So in this area, including by that circle, there are areas where we've got that dirty brown effect. So I'm going to take some of this paint, and it seems to be quite mottled. So let's try maybe just adding dabs. Let's see what kind of effect do we get. What does it look like? Yeah, it seems to be giving us something similar. Hey, yeah, so I'm happy with that. So we'll go with the dabbing effect. with a bristle brush. So for now, I'm not going to concern myself too much with, is it in exactly the right spot or where that circle is or anything like that. Let's first just dirty this guy up and give him some texture and character. And then from there, we'll fine tune stuff. Seeing some at the back here as well. It's quite dirty or damaged at the back there. I think it's going to look nice once we've got this all up and running, don't you agree? I mean, all these textures and things are going to add a lot of interest at the end of the day. Quite a bit over here. And I don't rush. I mean, something like this, you can see, if you're going to rush it, it's going to become all spotty and dotty. It sounds like a kid's cartoon. So if we don't want spotty and dotty, we want a nice, decent looking bit of character. All right, so here I'm actually adding some more black. Let's start getting some of those darker black guys in as well. So we've got some of that floating around here as well. And now what's cool, because we've got that white base on there already, what happens then is that if I put it down and it's too dark, then all I need to do is just go over it. Just keep tapping on top of it. Because you've now got that white paint underneath, the more I tap, the more it's going to, this color that I've got on my brush is going to mix. And because they're mixing, they'll lighten up. Yeah, this is looking pretty cool. I'm quite happy with the effect. I think it's going to look good once we're done. All right, so now that we've got some texture going on over there, now we can go and figure out where does that little logo on the spoon need to be. Because now we've got some contrasts that we can work with. So I'll just take a fine liner. And a little bit of white. And let's see if I can draw a circle. They say only mad people can freehand a circle. So hopefully I'm not too potty. Not quite a circle, but at least it's in the ballpark. So now that I've got a feel, what I'm actually doing is I'm looking around and seeing, is there not something that I could use that is that size, or at least something that I can put down that I can use to judge a good circle from. Let's see. Here I've got my medium, the lid for my medium. So if I keep an equal distance from that, I should get a good circle. So I'm going to just try and stay the same distance away from that as I go around. All right, at least that's got me in the ballpark. Okay, so let's take a look. It seems to have a bit of a triangular shape over there, so let's judge that in. And again, it doesn't need to look perfect. Unless you're going for that hyper realism, it doesn't need to be perfect. As long as we can get this guy to have that effect, then we're okay. So I'm not going to worry about the wording. It says Nirvana in there. I'm not going to worry about that wording or anything like that. I will suggest it later. All I need to do at this point is just get that positioning of this dude so that I know he's okay. And from there, I can start adding more detail because now I know where he is. So now I can see, all right, I need a bit more of the brownie dirt. I suppose we can call it. A bit more brownie dirt in this area over here. And as always, I'm using this as a guide. I'm not trying to get it exact. It's a good guide because now the dirt would naturally collect at certain places. And by getting it more or less at the same places, I'm following that natural, I'm going to get a natural look. And I'm also going to strategically use these dirt colors to bring out that shape over there. Can you see that on the photograph? There's quite a lot over here. So obviously here's a ridge where with washing or whatever, it's not coming clean. Well, this is because this little circle is a ridge which is raised. It gets brushed on, and that's why he is polished, and everything else is around it is not. So I'm going to carefully go up against that little white. And can you see how it's bringing it out? It's making it look more prominent. So that's really awesome. And I'm going to do that not everywhere, but just strategically here and there to make sure that this is nice and visible. Let's see, seems to be quite a bit of dark over here as well. And now you'll just do this and add as much as you feel you need to until you've got that effect. Yeah, now that I've gone away, it seems like this dark excuse me, this dark area over here needs to go a little bit darker. So I think before we carry on too far, let's just shade that guy a little bit darker, just to fine tune our our tonal values. Otherwise, we're going to get to a point where we're adding all this detail, and it doesn't look quite right. Because you haven't got that lovely, you haven't developed that lovely tonal value that you need to get. Can you see how dark he becomes over here? There we started off fine, we were good. But now that we're getting to here is not quite dark enough. So I'm just going to, don't need to wash the brush or anything. I'll just wipe this excess off that's on there. We go back to the black. So now just by adding more paint, what's happening is the black is now overwhelming the little bit of white that we've got over there. So the white is becoming less and less effective in mixing or diluting the color that we're adding. And that's the thing with silver. You've got to have those nice contrasts between the light and the dark. If you don't have those contrasts, you don't get the shine. That's sort of the secret in getting that lovely shiny look, is those extreme contrasts. Over here it's really thin. I'm going to try and do it with this brush. If it doesn't work, then I'll have to use a fine liner. Okay, that's looking better. So now we can carry on working our way up the spoon. So that heavy dirty effect does seem to be softening. It is more pronounced over there, but it gradually sort of just disappears on us. I'm going to continue to add some dabs and dots and dashes and stuff as we go up. Possibly more than what I'm seeing on the photograph. And that's where I get to use my artist license a little bit. Maybe I add a bit more extra character. And are these little dings and dabs and dashes and stuff in the correct place? No. Do they need to be in the correct place? No, of course not. Nobody's going to compare your photograph with a final painting. They'll never be put next to each other. This is going to hang up on the wall somewhere and the photograph will be forgotten. You're going to stash it or hide it in a drawer somewhere. Or just delete the damn file, eh? Okay, I'm going to go over to more of the brownie one again. Some white in that, just to lighten him up a bit. So I'm just making sure that I'm getting a bit of a variety, so it's not only black. Those little bits of brown and different colors add interest. And you'll see that I'm also turning the brush. Why I do that is then I know I'm not forming a repetitive pattern on the canvas. These little marks are all different. Because up here we're sort of at that at that rope part. So we'll now really have to just do our own thing. But I think now that we've done that, we've got a good feel for what needs to be done. So I think before we move up there, I'm going to just zip back to the fine liner for a few seconds. And now that we've got lots of lovely texture over here, I'm just going to suggest some of that wording here. Am I going to try and write Nirvana? Absolutely not. Way too much effort for too little payback. So I'm just basically doing a few little random lines to make it look as though there's some writing going on over there. I mean, it's only for the guy that comes to look really, really close at your canvas. Okie dokie. So let's start up at the top where we can see what we've got, and then from there we can work our way down to this area where we don't know what's going on, and then we'll just tie them together. So here I've definitely got that little bit of a dark ridge still from the shading side, not the texture side. So we do need to just work on getting that tonal contrast over there correct. So I'm going over to a fine liner. This is a number 4 fine round. Because it is quite a thin little line. And I now need this paint to more lie on top of what's over there. So to have as little mixing as possible with that, with the white that's at the bottom. And can you see now that you've got that dark, how suddenly this area looks extra shiny? So that's pretty cool. There seems to be another little darker spot there as well. So I'm putting him hard, and then I'll fade him out towards the top. Yeah, I think that's fine. All right, so from here, for now, I may even just stick with this brush for a short while, because I'm seeing quite distinct little black dots and things. Over here, so I'm going to put them in, more or less, where I see them. There's also a funny little mark over there. Then there's some lighter marks. So let's take off most of the paint off the brush, just by wiping it on your palette. So I'm just regulating the amount of paint that's on the brush that's available to come off onto the canvas. Now here's definitely a bunch of nicks and dings and things on this area. Let's make that one really dark on that edge there. And even here in this little left-hand side, or the bottom of the screen, this white side over here is not perfect. It's still got a few little texture marks and things. So I'm going to add just a few little marks on it. And because of that contrast, can you see how it's got looks like little pock marks? So I'm pretty happy with that. And it doesn't have to be solid all the way down. It's just there where it's more round. It seems to be more pock marked. And here, as it flattens out, it gets less and less. So that's pretty cool. And then let's get some black onto this brush. So now I just want to zoom back to the palette just for a second. I want to show you how I'm picking up this paint. I'm picking up the paint like this, and then I'm turning him 180 degrees, and I'm picking it up again. So can you see what's happened? It's formed a chisel point. Look how thin it is over there. Look how broad it is over there. So I'm now going to work with that chisel point piece. And that's going to allow me to get this lovely fine detail. Because we now know on this edge over here, it's got that thin line of black. So for that, I think I better also just add a bit more medium into that black paint. So I'll just scoop some of that black paint one side and mix the medium into it, so that the paint is thin like an ink. And by using that chisel point, now you can draw little short but super fine lines. If you've got a longer line, then you can also obviously use your rigger brush. Which just shows you there's always more than one way of doing the same thing. Alrighty, so I've gone over to the rigger brush, and I'm adding the thin little black line on that edge over there. It might not be as visible now, but when we come back in and add all that stuff in, then this guy is going to become a lot more visible. So try and get it as straight as what you can. If I need to get a super straight line, what I'll often do is this. I'll grab a ruler, like this. So now, let me see if I can turn this guy upright. Can you see there's a bit of a bevel on that ruler over there? So that if I put this guy down like this, the edge itself is not actually touching the canvas. So I cannot do that, and I can just run this brush, just touching that edge of the ruler, and that helps me get a nice straight line. But because of the bevel edge on the ruler, the paint can't flow in underneath. And then you avoid little areas like what I've done over there. Can you see it's got a bit of a bump to it? You don't want that. It's got to be straight. So I'll make them straight there now. On the inside, then when I come to this, I can squeeze that little bit of extra back. Alrighty, I think this little piece of spoon is starting to look pretty awesome. So now I can go back to the bigger brush again. And let's get some more of those brown marks in. So I'm seeing some faint, but they're definitely here. They're not as dotty as over there. That seems to be more like flatter areas. So I'm not tapping as much as I'm more of a tapping, but I'm also dragging it at the same time. So that gets rid of those little sharp points and stuff like you have over there. That makes sense? So here I'm tapping up and down, up and down, up and down. Here I'm tapping and I'm pulling at the same time. So it's putting down a dot, and then it's instantly spreading that dot. Okay, so can you see after that, the little rope pieces, peanuts, there's hardly anything left. So I'll just add a few little taps, a few spreads, and that should be it. So guys, if you are watching the class and you're enjoying it, please just quickly hit the like button. It helps us a lot, and YouTube at least knows to show the videos to people. He knows we're enjoying the classes are worth watching. Okay, so over here, can you see it's sort of all flattening out because you've got this round area over here is flattening out to become the spoon bit. So over here, we need to, let's get a little bit of, I'm going to use just the small brush for now. And I'm going to add just a little bit of white down there. I'm quite okay with the mixing. Like that. And then let's get a little bit of black on the brush. Because in here, it seems to be a little bit darker. So I'm going to add this nice flat tonal value over here. In other words, I'm making sure there's it's all the same color. And because it's the same color, it's going to look flat. Like that. And it's already bright over there, so we A for away. All right, so let's now take a look and see, do we need to bring back any highlights? So let's maybe pick up some neat white on the fine liner. And let's see. Because as you mix, that pure white has disappeared. So just here and there, I'm adding a little bit of a white dab. Just to make sure that we've got that little bit of shininess. I think he's nicely shiny over there. I'm happy with that. And over there, he also seems to be shiny. There, I went over the line with the black. So I'll just bring that little bit of shiny over there back. And then I think I'm going to call it a day on that part. So let's go over to the main spoon piece and see what do we need to do there. Alrighty, so most of that is filled up with peppercorns. So what we need to do is just form ourselves a bit of that outside edge, and we bring it in far enough so that when we add the peppercorns, if there are any places where there's a spoon shining through, you can see spoon. In other words, can you see over here? Here there's quite a bit of spoon shining through, and over there. But over here, there's nothing. So it's pointless painting the spoon there because you're going to be painting straight over it. So that's what I'm going to do now. So I don't think we need to wash the brush or anything like that. I think I'll just clean off the excess, so that we at least just start off on a neutral ground with this brush. So if I look at that, and we try and stick to the same concept as what we've used for the rest of the handle, we've got quite a bit of white around the edge. So let's add that little ring of white around the edge. It doesn't need to be too broad. Okay, so you can stop over there. So if you can't see where you're painting, what you do is you sit to the side so that the paint is reflecting in the light, and that way you can see. Alrighty, so there we've got that nice little white outline. So let's take the rest. The rest seems pretty dark with a few little lighter bits and a few reflected colors of the peppercorns that are reflecting in that spoon. So I think what I'll do is I'm going to start with a black. On the inside. So now I'm going to try and sort of just leave myself that edge plus a little bit extra. That way I can marry these two and bring them together and make them meet in exactly the correct place and the correct way, using finer brushes. Does that make sense? Because you've sort of got two distinct parts to this. Well, actually three. You've got one with all the peppercorns, then you've got the inside, the concave part of the spoon itself, and then you've got the rim. So we need to treat each one of those separately and then tie them together. Okay, so now I need to sort of just roughly judge. I've got sort of, if I do this kind of a thing, maybe that far in, I'll be okay. So I'm going to add a few little areas, roughly where I see them, because I know I'm going to use the peppercorns that are there as a guide. So if I do this, I'll get them roughly in similar places. So I'm just taking a look at each area roughly. How far do these peppercorns need to go in? Or how far does the spoon area need to go in? There seems to be quite broad over there. Like that. There's quite narrow over there, so that's fine. There's a bit of gaps over there. Okay, so now I'm going to go over to a softer brush because I've got quite a bit of paint lying there now. So let's start off with still black on the brush. So now I've picked it up using that chisel point again because now I'm going to start establishing this rim. There I can see super thin. So I'm holding the brush flat. I want him to basically glide over that white that is over there. And lay on top of it. Okay, she seems to be quite thin over there. Nice little fine edge. Then over here seems to be broadening up just a little bit, not too much. If your brush starts getting too white, too much white paint on it, just quickly wipe him off on your kitchen towel. Because same as before, we would rather have this now being too dark. It's easy for us to go over it and get him to blend with the white underneath. But for now, let's rather get him too dark. Yeah, it seems to have just a funny little tie-in over there. Okay, let's do that top edge. So there it seems to have a funny little, like a double edge over there. So I'll go a little bit broader, and we'll see if we can work in that broad edge. If it works, we put it in. If it doesn't, we paint it closed. Okay, and he curls in there like that, and here you've got that little bit of just a little bit of a shading. So I'm using just the gentlest little bunch of taps just to shade that in over there, so that we've got a quick little blend from the round bit to the flat bit. That should be fine. All right, so what I'm going to do now is just around here and see what do I need to do. So for a start, here he seems to be going a bit lighter. So let's lighten that up over there. And yes, I am seeing reflected light, a bit of reds, a bit of yellows and stuff from the peppercorns. But for now, I'm not going to bother about it. Let's first get this sorted. Once you've got that basic effect right, then to use a bit of a glaze to add in those reflected light effects. It's not a problem. That'll be easy. Okay, so I'm just using a bunch of random little taps and dabs and stuff, just to add some textures and contrasts, very similar to what we've done on the rest of the spoon. These guys are just more, instead of darts, they're just a little bit more long. Do you see I'm putting it in with little short straight strokes? Little dabs and marks here and there. Keep it random. Got to look random, otherwise it's not going to look weathered. Alright, so I think that's okay there for now. So over there, I'm going to just pick a little bit of black, mix some white into it to get a mid-tone. I'm still using the fine liner and a chisel point. Maybe I can zoom way in over there. So just bear with me. Can you see there's like that funny rough edge over there? So I'm just using this chisel point, using that fine edge. And I'm just going to run a thin little line over there. The minute I see my chisel point is disappearing on me, I'm going to reform him by dragging him through that paint again. Maybe we can go a little bit darker on that color. Yeah, it's not looking too bad, eh? It's again just something that I think will add an extra little bit of contrast, a little bit of interest, I should say. Okay, so if I look here and I look there, I'm still not quite happy. Remember, I had a problem with the symmetry on this guy, and I'm still not happy with the symmetry. He's flattened out over there. So let's fix that. You'll often have that when you need to just tweak things. It's not much. It's not going to be much. That seems almost enough, eh? That's literally just a few millimeters. Alrighty, so now it's quite easy to just move all this up. That's why I never panic if I do have something that's not 100% perfect at the drawing stage. As you paint, you spot those little things. I mean, to be perfectly honest, I thought it was fine. And now you get to the painting and you see it's still a little bit off. So then you fix it. Alrighty, so let's see what happens to that little double edge here on the end. Yeah, so he seems to sort of just merge into the flatness of the spoon. So where can I put this overlay? Let's try them over there. Yeah, that should be fine. Bring him in, around, and I'll just merge him with that little flat color over there. Alrighty, so I think that's enough. So all you're going to do now is continue with your peppercorns and pop them in. So my suggestion would be is that, you know, because you've got medium in here, it's going to take just a few days for that to dry. And then once it's dry, then you come back in and you do your peppercorns. Then at least you know it's not going to mix with the spoon color. And you're not going to have muddy colored peppercorns. They're going to be nice and bright. Alrighty, so Maria's saying what I do to help me see value is I cut a 3-inch square from a milk container, then I punch a hole in it in 2 places. So then you can have one on the image and one over the painting, and that isolates the areas. Yes. Let me show you what I've got, Maria. This is a little gadget I designed, and it works like a bomb. So it's got pretty much the same thing. Here you've got your little color compare holes over a neutral background. So what you tend to do with something like this is, if I want to compare, for example, is that brighter than that, then you'd have put that over, so you've isolated it on that hole and isolated on that hole. So now you can easily compare those 2 colors without all the colors in between messing you around. And I don't now have a color print with me, but if you had a color print, you can also put your color print there and then compare, isolated there and isolated on your painting over there like that. So that's the color buster. You can get it off my website at paintbasket.com, or you can just do a Google search for color buster. It'll pop up at the top. So there's the spelling of it, color buster. So what this thing does is it's also got other ways of doing it. You've got your color wheel over there in opposite colors. You've got your 10-step color chart. There's your color wheel converted to grayscale. So it gives you a quick visual reminder of how dark is one color versus the other. All your color mixing rules are printed over here. And then this side is actually where all the magic happens. This here, if you go look on I don't want to explain it now, it'll take too long. Go look on the website. I've got a video there. It shows you how you can use this side here to match your colors perfectly. And anybody that has bought it will testify that this works like a bomb for matching your colors perfectly. Now, what is nice about this is that you're going to use it initially a ton because it's now helping you to match your colors. But it also helps to train your eye to see colors. So in actual fact, you're going to use this a ton in the beginning, and gradually you use it less and less and less. Yeah, Diana's sort of confirming what I said. The color buster works like a bomb. Alrighty, so now I want to show you just something else before we call it a day. Can you see all our peppercorns and stuff? They look like they're hanging in the air, literally like planets in space. We don't want that. They're not planets. It's salt and peppercorns and things. So now that you've got some black on your canvas or on your palette, this is what you need to do. You need to give each one of these guys a shadow. So you're going to take the same brush, the one we've been using in the whole class. I'm going to just wipe the worst off the brush. Pick up a tiny amount, literally let me go over to the palettes. You can see how little I'm picking up. Can you see how thin the paint is over here? You can see more palette than paint. I'm going to pick up that little bit of paint that's lying there. That's how little paint I'm picking up at a time. So now in this painting, the sun is coming from this direction over here. So let's make it about a 45 degrees. So now you need to add just slightly onto the edge, but mostly off. You need to add a little shadow. I think I'll use a smaller or a fine liner, a softer brush. Now obviously if your background isn't dry yet, you can't do this. You've got to wait till it's dry. So you add just a tiny amount of paint. And you're going to glaze in. A shadow for each of these guys. So we've got a beautifully dark background, so it's not always going to be perfectly visible. But can you see there? It just settles each of these guys. So I'll do one or two just so that you've got a feel for it. So I'll put this paint down quite a bit over here, right up against the edge. And then I'm going to feather it out so that it softens up and disappears on me. And yes, the background is really dark. So some places like here, you're not particularly going to see it, but trust me, it's going to make all the difference. You can see it. Even though you don't think you can see it. That doesn't take long. You see how quickly it goes? Okay, and then you take more paint. Now you're going to pick up quite a bit of paint. And then for each of these little salt granules, you're going to add a little shadow onto each one of them as well. Yeah, it's going to take you a while, but it'll be worth it. So that little, on these little salt granules, use your finest little brush. Because they need to be small little shadows. Then when we get to here, the spoon casts a shadow on those guys. So now I'm going to go back over to my bristle brush again, pick up just a little bit of paint. So now I'm going to carefully, and if you're scared you muck up your spoon, then just wait. And you're going to glaze a little bit of a shadow over these salt crystals that are right up against your spoon. And can you see as I'm doing that, it's lifting up the spoon, it's giving the spoon height. So as before, it's going to be darker here against the spoon. I'm using a feather light touch, absolutely no pressure whatsoever. Like that, and then as I move away, I'm going to have less paint, so I'm feathering it. In other words, I'm feathering it as I move away. Can you see how that has just lifted up that whole spoon like that? Pretty cool, eh? Just a few strokes will add all that dimension. So you need to go ahead and do that with all these, like when you've got a big bunch over there, it's not really necessary to add shadows. It's when you've got little individual ones like that, you add those little shadows. And you can see it. Can you see the shadow over there? It's tiny. But instantly, all these guys have suddenly stood up off your canvas. They're not flat anymore. They're not floating in space. All right, so we're going to call it a day for now. You're going to continue with this piece on your own. You know how to do the peppercorns. We've done enough of them. So it's just more of the same. Just add peppercorns and peppercorns and peppercorns. So your main thing that you want to do is just judge the sizes to get the sizes right. Then we'll come back for another class, and we'll tackle that there where it's got all the detail in it, so you can see how to do that as well. So let me zoom out so you can see what the canvas looks like at this point. You can see our handiwork for today. Alrighty. Yeah, I think you agree with me. The spoon is looking pretty good. So if you got any last questions, fire away. There we go. Alrighty, so yes, Maria's asking about the color buster. It's basically a printable document. So you're going to take it to your photocopy shop and you get them to print it out for you. Unless, of course, you've got a good printer. I've got a standard a Hewlett-Packard HP inkjet. I print my own. They print perfectly, absolutely perfectly. So you print it out and then you laminate it. So I've got full instructions, and I'll show you. There's a how-to video on the sales page as well. Sorry, I didn't mean to sell anything today, but the color buster does work like a bomb. Alrighty, so thank you for joining me. I'll see you in the next class for part 4, and then I'm sure we'll be able to wrap this painting up.